When it comes to managing bevels in Blender, there's a plethora of places where you can do it. One of them is through something called the bevel helper, whose hotkey is Control-Shift-B. It's rarely used, but it's used in cases where you want to deal with just the bevels individually without having to deal with all the modifiers coming around it. So to set up our example, we'll press Q and we'll just add a bevel, and then we'll Control-Shift-Click bevel again to add a second bevel. And there I go, trying to use box cutter again. We'll just use a cube and perform a difference, and on this shape we'll just lower that bevel a bit, and we'll do the same thing here, except we want to go inside the helper and make sure that we have bevel step on, so that way when we control click difference we give this its own area. And we could do the same thing here, just duplicate this up, control clicking difference inside the cube menu to basically bevel step this. And so we have this mesh that's built up of many modifiers, even though it doesn't look like it. If we control tilde and we look at our helper, we can see that it's more than it's able to display at once because most of them are expanded. So let's collapse them. So individually, if I wanted to go in and mess with this bevel, I can, and then I can mess with this bevel, and then I can mess with this bevel. And as you can see, this type of workflow is a little bit disjointed. And so for that reason, we have it where users can press Control-Shift-B and actually bring up what's called the bevel helper. And by going inside of this, you're able to first divide and multiply your bevels just by larger values. So here I am just quickly, modifying these values on the fly without any issue. I can divide and multiply them, which is something that clients have asked a lot for in the past, where basically on a model I'm providing for them, they're like, hey man, can you exaggerate the bevel more, or can you minimize the bevel more, or something like that. Then in which case I can just get in here and just individually manage these bevels. I'm also able to turn off bevels at my own whim depending on what my needs are for this model at this time. So in the event that you're actually needing to adjust your bevels, Control-Shift-B is just a quick way of bringing up the bevel helper. In the event that you're not a big fan of Control-Shift-B, you can also expand the hops drop down, where if bevels are present on an object, you can also go in here and begin modifying the shape itself. You might also notice that there's an option for using custom profile curves, which is also an option inside of this. And inside of the helpers that are associated with hard-ups, you're also able to save and load custom profiles, which I have specialized videos talking about. But in the event that you don't want a custom profile, we'll just change this back over to super ellipse to just make it back generic. And that is basically, the Control-Shift-B bevel helper in a nutshell. And there's a lot more to the hotkey than just that. Control-Shift-B is useful when it comes to bevels being involved, but if you don't have any bevels involved, Control-Shift-B has a different behavior to it. For example, if you have multiple objects selected and you press Control-Shift-B, it will actually bring up something called interactive Boolean. This is for times when you're working on a couch and you don't have access to pressing Control numpad minus or Control numpad plus. You're able to just quickly just take a Boolean and just get in here and just convert it to whatever you need it to be. For example, we can take this and we can press Control-Shift-B and make it a difference, and we're done. We can add another cube. We'll select these two, Control-Shift-B, but we will roll the wheel to change what we want it. For this one, we want it to be an out set, so we'll press T in order to push this one out. But keep in mind that with any shape, I can press Q and then roll back to bring back the shape that I had, and then still press Control-Shift-B to toggle what this shape is. So I can actually shift a Boolean from being one state to being another. For example, this started off as a difference, now it's an inset. We can press spacebar and we're done. We do the same thing with this shape. We press Control-Shift-B, we turn this into an inset. I keep going to Q because I'm so used to it, but now we've actually turned this difference into an inset, which is just another way that you can work inside of hard-ops. So if you're on a laptop, you definitely want to give the Control-Shift-B hotkey a try, because it comes in handy for times where you're just needing to get a very particular Boolean, but maybe the hotkey for it isn't available, or you're just wanting to get there a little bit quicker than going through the Q menu, which isn't bad in itself, but we just wanted to provide users with multiple venues for getting to the same destination depending on their accessibility needs. So, when it comes to Control-Shift-B, it is a multi-function tool that has different purposes to it. In fact, if I have a singular selection and I press Control-Shift-B, you can see that it actually allows me to go through bool scroll. So this is another function that it has where if booleans are present but there's no bevels present, it will allow you to scroll through the booleans on your object. So it definitely has its use for trying to provide you a degree of utility when you're on a laptop. But if you're with a single selection, you just quickly need to just scroll through your booleans to just grab one, and you need to just change that boolean to something else, you can just quickly press Control-Shift-B again. So it is something that's there to make things a little bit more accessible for you, but I could see how such a thing could also cause a little bit of user confusion with the amount of utility that's also being added to hops with all these extra functions.